Welcome to Locked In, your source for everything basketball. My name is Nick DeFeo, alongside my co-host, Jason Shea. We dive into all things hoops, from recruiting tips and training advice to hot takes and the latest news. Whether you're a player, coach, parent, or fan, we've got you covered. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us for more great content every week. Time to get locked in. Coach Jason Shea, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Nick.
Great.
Excited for a great
we got a great show.
Here,
yeah, we got a great show. Kevin Kochiss, CEO and founder of KMK Strength and Conditioning. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, man. This is great. So let's run through Kevin's bio quickly. Certified strength and conditioning specialist, bachelor's degree in exercise science, as well as certification as a strength and conditioning specialist from the NSCA, the National Strength and Conditioning Association. Internship at Yale, programming workouts for football, golf, tennis, and the 2018 Division I National Champion lacrosse team. And then ultimately got your master's degree from Southern Connecticut in human performance with a concentration in sports medicine. Quite the resume.
Thank you very much.
Let's jump right into it. What got you into strength and conditioning? There's obviously a clear love there. What do you love about it?
So, I always loved the training aspect of every single sport. I was a football, basketball, baseball player growing up, but what really interested me was how to get better at each sport, and that was what really brought me to just trying to consume knowledge on my own of how to get better, how to swing the bat faster, how to run faster, jump higher, all that. So I was really interested, even from a young age, of how to train, one, and then how to get better. And strength and conditioning wasn't really a thing back then when I was young like it is now. So the world was kind of my oyster, and I just really tried to apply myself as much as I can. Yeah,
that's great. And that ultimately led to you starting your own company and the strength and conditioning company. What year did you start that, and what kind of prompted you to do that?
So I started that in COVID, 2020. And what kind of wanted me to go into that field was, one, I saw a real niche for high school athletes that they weren't getting the strength and conditioning that they needed. I kind of look at my background, and we didn't have a strength coach in high school. No one knew what they were doing with the team workouts. It wasn't sport-specific based. It was kind of just hit a bunch of curls in the corner. We weren't recovering properly. So I saw a real niche there that there wasn't really a market at that time for high school strength conditioning. So that's what kind of led me onto, hey, I think we really have something here, and if we have a good team behind us, I think it's a really great industry to be in. So
yeah, and you picked the right thing, I think, at the right time, because in the last 4 or 5 years, strength and conditioning piece has been huge in high school athletics. So you picked the right time, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Which is great.
Kev, I'll jump in here, and I think what so many players are going to want to hear from you on this is, how do they dunk the ball, right? So how do you go from being a 7th grader, 8th grader? Obviously, height plays a role in that, but how do you become more explosive and potentially get above the rim as a young high school player who's dying to do what he sees all of his favorite players on TV do all the time?
Well, I think the first thing is not comparing yourself to others, not one saying oh, this is what LeBron does for vertical jump. Most people aren't LeBron. So kind of realizing your genetic potential, and then realizing, okay, this is how much I can grow. And also be happy with, if you were touching net before touching backboard, is also a huge accomplishment, not necessarily always dunking. But I think really the keys to explosive and unlocking a lot of that potential, one starts with mobility. I feel like a lot of players are super tight, hydration, and then obviously the strength and conditioning portion of it plays a role. But having all of those are key factors, not one more important than the other, but being very well balanced in your training and not overtraining certain muscle groups and being well balanced.
Are you going, do you think plyometrics, are you doing a lot of squats with weights? When we were growing up, it was do a lot of cat phrases, which probably was not right, as the primary way to jump higher. We were putting the strength shoes on. You guys remember the strength shoes?
I literally have those.
Yeah, most people probably don't remember the strength shoes, but the strength shoes had the big platform thing in the toe, and you do exercises in those things, and those are supposed to make you jump higher. I don't know if it worked.
They used to sell them on East Bay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. So what's the primary focus, or is it just a combination of all of it?
So I like to look at what an athlete's doing also outside. Like we mentioned a couple athletes that we both train together. If you're a high volume basketball player, you're already getting a ton of plyos. If you play in a weekend tournament, you're jumping 500 to 1,000 times. So for trainers to do more plyos after that, I don't think that's kind of smart. That's how people get injured. So I'm a big component on unilateral training the right side just as much as the left. Every type of training has its purpose, and I think you really have to kind of hit a little bit of everything. So you do have to lift heavy. You do have to do some plyos, but I wouldn't recommend it right after a game, right? You have to do some mobility. So just kind of a little bit of everything is super important. And then knowing when to rest and when to really push it is the biggest thing, because when I was young, I just go, go, go. We didn't have any rest days. The training wasn't specified, and there wasn't a periodized program. That's what I try to preach and saying, like, hey, what does your training look like from January to December, right? The first quarter of the year, we're going to go heavy on the strength. Second quarter, we're going to go heavy on the plyos to prime us for the season. And then after the season, the fourth quarter, we're going to do a lot of active recovery and mobility. So I kind of look at training in like a year-long period, as opposed to like, hey, what can I do today to get better? Is like, what's like the big picture of like the year kind of training looking like?
That makes sense. And last one for me on this one, is there something that, for the kids physiologically that happens when they get to 16 or 17 years old? I've just noticed with my players that it seems like their first dunk, almost not for like the guys, not for some of the guys, not like for a guy like Abdu, like his first dunk was probably in third grade. I'm talking about like most of the guys, it's their junior year.
Yep.
All of a sudden I see them and now they're dunking the ball. One player that comes to mind, on the roster, and all of a sudden he's catching lobs, and I didn't think he was ever going to dunk the ball. Is there something that happens to their bodies at that age that changes beyond just the training?
Yeah, I mean, physiologically, I mean, your testosterone, growth hormone are literally just starting to peak. So that's why when you're a junior, senior in high school, when you play all these AAU tournaments, I can remember playing 5-6 games, eating one slice of pizza, not being tired, and then my dad making me do push-ups right after the games. Like, just because you recover so fast, your testosterone's peaking, like I said, growth hormone, all of these hormones is when you start like actually developing them as a man, like right around, you said, like 16, 17. That's when you usually see like the huge strength gains. So that's why I always like to have athletes develop a base 13 through 15, because then once you have that base, and then you can really put on some solid weight when you're 16 through 18. The junior, senior year, add some serious muscle mass, but also some serious vert too.
That's great.
And that's a perfect segue to where I'm going to go. And most parents, I feel like the main question is, when do I start my kid in training? And I know we're talking about that 13 to 15 age range, but at what point is it middle school? Is it sixth grade? Is it different for every kid? At what point should they get their kid into maybe some plyometrics, but also into some strength training? What age?
I get this question a lot, to be honest with you. There's not really an age that I say is best to start. I think any time is the best to start. And training can just be defined as playing catch with your son. It doesn't need to be going to the weight room and lifting weights. It could be I'm working on some balance, I'm working on some body weight movements. So I think training can happen at any time. I know when I have a kid, I'm going to be training them super early, but the training will be fun because you want them to love the training. You want them to first, when they're really early, enjoy it and not be so serious on them, but they know that they have to do this in order to get better and to put them above other kids that they're playing against. So I don't really have an age. I just think that the training should be different depending on the age. So.
And early on in their training, do you suggest the body weight stuff first, and then obviously incrementally with weightlifting?
Yeah, because if you can't move properly without any weight, why should you weight bear or put loading exercise on? So I'm always a big component of body weight first. I don't think you should get under a bench unless you can do 20 push-ups. I don't think you can squat unless you do perfect box jump. So those are kind of criteria of every kid wants to get underneath the bar, but can you do a single leg pistol squat before you can head onto a back squat? Can you do, like I said, the body weight push-ups, the pull-ups before you can get underneath the bench? So we have that at KMK. We try to set certain standards before you go under, just so we can make sure everything's safe, but also keeping it fun at the same time.
Yeah, those benchmarks are going to be huge, especially for young athletes to prove themselves a little bit, which is great. And obviously some of the parents I think out there that maybe wait a little longer, or their kid maybe 7th, 8th grade, maybe feel a year or two behind. What are some of the risks for them putting a kid under a bar or under a bar, whether it's bench or squat? What are some of those risks that they might inherit if they don't have that base?
If they don't train, you saying?
If they don't do the body weight and the base,
what
are some of those risks that they might assume getting under to get to do a bench press?
Well, one, they're not going to be symmetrical body weight wise. So if you just do compound exercises like squats, deadlifts, stuff like that, you're not training single leg movements at all. Your right could be way more dominant than your left. So then you get on the court after doing that for 2 years and you make a cut, and then you're like, oh, I tore my ACL. It's because you weren't training properly. You weren't training the left as much as the right. You were just doing compound exercises, which will favor the right side or left side depending on which side you're deficient in. So I think that's big.
Kev, talk about the is it myth or fact that if you lift too early, you stunt your growth?
Complete myth. I have to answer this question probably 10 times a day at KMK, but yeah, there's just no studies that show that. And when I try to joke around with parents in a fun way, because I get asked so much, I'm like, show me a peer-reviewed study that says that, and I'll definitely take a look at it. But there is literally none. So I'm a big science guy when it comes to like certain methodologies like that. When I took my master's, we had to read studies over studies, and that was like a big myth we had to prove, and we tried to find studies on it, and it wasn't true. So,
well, staying on that, let's talk about supplements and things that kids should be doing and at what age they should be doing it. Creatine is always a big one. I know when I was coming up as a coach and then as an assistant athletic director, that was always a debatable supplement. Should you be taking it? Should you not be taking it? At one point, it was banned in schools because they didn't have studies for kids over 18. And then I think we spoke, and you said, well, as long as you're monitoring it. So talk about stuff like that, specifically creatine, because I think that's one that a lot of the kids are thinking about using or taking.
Yeah, so I like all people to think that supplements are just supplementing what you're not getting from a diet. So I feel like any supplement is okay to take if it's naturally occurring in foods. So for example, creatine is found in steak, red meat, stuff like that. So if, let's say your son's having 10-ounce steak, he's probably having 20 grams of creatine anyway. So it's really saying like, hey, if I don't want to spend the money on a steak, or we can't get a steak, and why don't we just put 2 scoops of 10 grams of creatine in your shake, and it's the same thing. So they're getting the same effect as they would through food. Anything outside of what you can't get through food, those type of supplements, I would not, advertise or anything like that. So supplements are just supposed to make your life easier and quicker. So like I said, if you can't get outside and can't get enough vitamin D from the sun, then you can take a vitamin D supplement. If you aren't eating enough fruits and vegetables, then you can take a vitamin C supplement. It's the honestly easy way out, and it's also affordable too. So you don't have to do all that stuff. So that's what I would say.
So an 8th grader parent comes to you and says, we're thinking about a creatine regimen. Fine to do?
Yep. I think it's fine to do, because I think if people do their research on creatine too, it's not just for gaining muscle, it's also for recovery. It's good for your skin, it's good for your hair, like it's naturally occurring. And they also feel more energized with it. So I think that's big.
Good for your hair, Nick. You must have taken a lot of creatine. I must have missed that.
Me and Jay,
I missed that supplement.
Damn. Creatine supplement.
I must have extra.
I'll start loading up again. I can make a comeback. No, that's great information. I think there's a lot of questions out there on those things, and Kevin's been a great resource for me, Nick, and for years. We started back at Notre Dame. Kevin was training our guys, enormous amounts of energy out there, and great tips and advice as we've gone through it. And he was even training me a little bit about a year ago, but it was too tough. He was too tough. I had to go back to walking.
Walking's always good.
Yeah.
Walking's always good. Don't forget to subscribe and follow all the social accounts. We'll make sure we tag Kevin's social accounts as well, so we can get all of his stuff up there, so you guys can start following, and meal plans is part of the new business part. So that's great. So as you maybe take over a new team or new program, what's the first quarter that you say? What's the first quarter look like for a basketball team that you're going to start to work with maybe for the first time? What does that first session look like? Or first session, the first quarter, first couple weeks, or first month or so?
Yeah, so it all depends on, like I said, sports, like what specific sport, because you want to prime them for the season. Jay and I have had many talks on when I was creating the basketball program for ND. So you pretty much want them to be the strongest, the fastest, the most recovered for the biggest game too. So not necessarily for the beginning of the season. I think a lot of strength coaches prep their team to be like prime time 100% at the first game of the season, but the season's a couple months long. So if they don't do any training in season, like each week by week they get weaker and weaker, and they are less explosive and all that stuff, and their body's like, hey, we're getting the stimulus from lifting and we don't get it anymore, and that's when people get injured, to be honest with you, is when they are lifting before the season 2 or 3 times a week and then just stop because their body's not getting that same stimulus, or they stop having the protein shake after the workout. If your body's in a routine and it's flowing good, you just gotta like stay with it. So that would be the first thing that I would say is like, we want to prime them for playoffs and postseason, depending on the team and stuff like that. So.
And let's get to one of the bigger questions, I think, especially from a lot of basketball parents, coaches, and players themselves. Should we lift in season? And obviously, it's a huge part of the game as you get to college and as a pro. But in high school, your opinion on what lifting in season looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. You should lift in season. We should be doing multiple stuff in season. Just being smart. We want to. That's why we, like when we were doing our summer training, we would test everyone's 1 rep max, broad jump, vertical jump, the beginning and at the end. And we want to stay in season around 95% of that. And then if they're not hitting that 95%, if they're slacking, if they're like, their bench was, let's say 100 pounds, make things easy. And when we did our check-in test week 1 of the season, they were at 80 pounds. So they're either not sleeping enough, they're not getting enough stimulus with the lift, they're not eating enough, maybe they have stressors in their life. So that's kind of like a wake-up call. So that's a key thing that we could do as strength coaches, where if I'm training the guys, I could let Jay know, hey, this guy is severely, his strength gains have gone down, his explosiveness has gone down. Let's have a talk with him. And maybe it's something outside of, maybe he's super stressed, cortisol going through the roof, he's not getting enough sleep, or we need to like talk to him. So that's, I think, a strength coach job to like go to the head coach and say like, hey, he's not even close to where he should be athletic wise.
Yeah. And what in season, is it 2 times a week? Is it 3 times a week? Does it vary depending on game schedule? What's your thoughts on that?
Definitely varies upon game schedule. I would set, like when I made in-season programs, I would always go 2. So you can always do like an upper, lower split, or you can do full body, but just like 1 high volume, one low volume, 1. So there's a lot of different ways you could play it. But I remember like when I was working with Jay, some games were a little bit easier than others. Sometimes he only had 1 game a week. So I would set 2 times a week for the coaches in season, but if you have a lower week, like get another strength training session in. And honestly, sometimes that's better than doing more running and more plyometrics in training, because they're getting in practice, they're jumping 500 times. In a game, they're jumping 700 times. They're getting extra shots up. Like they're doing so much basketball training. Like they don't need to do more basketball training outside in season. They need to be lifting heavier. So.
Yeah, we took that advice, and Kevin did it when he was working with us years ago. And we've gone to the point now, Kev, where if we have 2 days before a game, anytime we have 2 days at least, we're getting in the weight room. Yeah. And if it's usually 2 times a week at a minimum, we want to be in the weight room. And if we have a week off, we'll go every other day.
Yep.
Because we find there's more gains for our guys than just continually repping. Basketball season so long, you're in the gym so much that you're going to get sometimes more of this because you're not doing it as often. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of gains in that. Speaking of gains, so many guys want to get bigger. I talk to my players all the time. If you're not in the weight room, if you're not getting stronger, you're not going to be able to compete at the level you want to compete at, and you're not going to get recruited at the level you want to get recruited at, because when a college coach comes in the gym, I think that they're going to look at you, they're going to assess what you look like. That's the first impression of you. Yeah. And if you're a sophomore, that's one thing. If you have a skinnier frame and it doesn't look like you've been in the weight room, you might be. It just hasn't gone on yet. I always joke that I feel like you don't start growing out or getting gains until you stop going up. Yeah. That's how I've always seen it with my guys. Jelani White was an example of that. He worked his butt off, but until he stopped growing up, he didn't really start going out. Yeah. But at the same time, it's not just about bulk, but talk about how to put on weight in the off season, how to put on good weight that you want to see. And then I tell my guys too, the skinnier players, don't focus so much on weight all the time. Just be strong and tough. If you're strong and tough, because you're working hard in the weight room, those gains might not be visible, but it still does show through to coaches when they watch you play that you're able to handle getting bumped off the ball, finishing at the rim with contact, making a difficult play out of a trap. So talk about, you do want to put on weight. How do you put on good weight in the off season? And then just building that strength up and that toughness in game through your conditioning and strength programs.
Yeah, so a couple things to think about here is basketball players are not bodybuilders. So basketball players don't need to have massive arms. They need to be strong, and you can see when a player is strong through contact. Like look at Kevin Durant, like super skinny arms, but when you see him finish through contact, like he's strong. Like if you ask his trainer, like what all of his lifts are super intense, super strong. So I wouldn't be so concerned about weight. I would, as a player, be more concerned about their habits, how many times they're lifting, how like trackability is huge too. I think like 90% of the kids aren't tracking what they eat, how much grams of protein they're having, how many calories they're having, how many carbs they're having, when they're having all of these things. So I think nutrition, if you can get nutrition right at a high school level, then you're going to be light years ahead of everyone else, because everyone likes to lift, right? Everyone likes to curls and do push-ups, but how many people like to track their macros? How many people will say maybe no to ice cream and yes to oatmeal and peanut butter, stuff like that. So I think like once they master the nutrition game, then it'll just happen. So try not to focus on the end goal. If I want to get to 200 pounds, but just focus on, I'm going to track my food every single day, hit three days a week lift, and progress each week, get a little bit stronger, each week eat a little bit more, and it'll just happen naturally. I think people get too fixated on the end goal as the weight.
I don't know why these guys have such a problem putting on weight. I wish I could use my app. I do use an app,
Yeah.
and I'm tracking how many calories not to eat. So I'm trying to keep my calories under 2,000 every day. And these kids, it's like if they got to 4,000, they did a great job. I can get to 4,000 at like breakfast before noon, no problem.
Yeah.
And I'd be so happy to do it. Instead, I'm cut in half. But that's what you're talking about. They've got to actually watch what they're eating, but it's got to be good calories. So like you said, ice cream might get them to 3,000 calories, but that's the last 1,000 calories are lousy.
Yeah, exactly.
For them, and it's not going to give them the gains that they want.
And one thing I want to harp on nutrition, it's not just gaining big muscle, but it's also about how you feel. So when players are feeling like, wow, I feel good today, I feel bouncy, I feel refreshed, probably because 1, you got a good night's sleep, 2, maybe you ate pretty good, 3, you're like super hydrated, maybe threw in some electrolytes in there. Like, don't you want to feel that way in game day? That's something you can control. You can't control if you get a couple foul calls early on or whatever, but you can control eating right, sleeping, getting your nutrition. I mean, that might be the difference between 15 points a game and 20 points a game. That might be the difference between getting recruited and not. So I think that's a controllable that every kid can have.
I just want to follow up on that because I just thought of it. Tell kids what they should be eating the day before and the day of. It used to be when we were coming up that you'd eat pasta before the night before, and then the day of, I think it was always like a protein meal or something like that. What are they doing? What should they do?
I mean, every kid's different. You kind of gotta. So what I would like to start with is I would practice these before practice and see how you feel, because some people react great to high carbs. Some people, they have oatmeal before a game and they feel bloated, sick, like I need to go to the bathroom, stuff like that. So I wouldn't try anything for the first time in season. Like when you're in the off season, say like, I'm going to pretend this practice is championship game 7. I'm going to try out this meal, see how I feel. Oh, I felt like shit on that meal. And then the next time I'm going to try this and see how, so, cause it's hard to give a generalized, I know it'd be easier if I said like eat a banana, but it's different for everyone. So there are fast acting carbs, there are long digesting carbs. So like, the idea of back in the day when it was eat pasta before game night, those are long digesting carbs. So you would feel that energy about 10 hours after, which would be like quote unquote game day. So that's not a bad idea. And then right before, like 2 to 3 hours before, you want fast digesting carbs with some potassium and electrolytes. So banana, oatmeal, something like that.
They want one of your bars, don't they?
Yeah, exactly.
So we'll tell them about the bars.
So this is a company that was started by Max Manjos, Game Ready Nutrition. So these bars are made specifically for that reason. Have electrolytes in it. They're all natural foods, fast digesting carbs, and you'll feel it within 30 to 45 minutes. You'll just start feeling good, feeling refreshed, feeling like, hey, I'm ready to rock and roll on this. So.
Nice. Max, man, is that a former prep shooter?
Former prep knockdown shooter.
Oh, man, I would not have given you that plug if I had known that.
Yeah.
No, he was a great player.
So Max, I was training Max for a couple years, and he came to me, and that same issue where he was like, what do I eat before game? What do I eat? And I kind of told him, I was like, these are some general guidelines, see what kind of works for you. And he was a big AAU guy. When you've seen AAU tournaments, you got sodas, Cheetos, all that. I mean, that's not prepping anyone for any game. So I felt like there was a big niche for that. He came up with everything, and I just kind of like backed him on it because I believed him and I believed in the idea and the product, and kind of went from there.
That's great.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. We talked about sleep, and you mentioned it a few times.
Yep.
What are you recommending for kids, maybe middle school age and then up through the high school age? How many hours of sleep should they get, and what does it do to their performance should they get the correct amount of sleep?
So when you're younger, you should sleep actually way more because that's when your body grows. Your body grows in your sleep. So like there's actually been studies on if you're not getting enough sleep when you're younger, like it'll stunt your growth. So talk about stunting your growth. If you could be 6'6" or 6'3", and you're getting 3 hours of sleep and you're stressed all the time at 13, 14, like that'll affect a lot on your central nervous system and stuff. So when you're younger, like when you had a baby, they try to sleep like 12 hours a day. It's kind of like, obviously you can't sleep 12 hours a day with everyone's schedule, but try to get as much sleep as humanly possible when you're in high school. And the kids don't do it at all. Like they're texting me, switching their sessions around at 12, 1 a.m. I have my phone off. But they should be. That's a huge element that's missing in the high school athletes game is sleep, putting your phone off. These are all like good habits that are controllable that will severely impact your play right away. So I think that's a huge issue. They should be sleeping more than adults do, because they're in their growing phase. They want to get stronger, faster. They want to grow. Like that's when you do grow in your sleep. So if you're not getting your sleep, you're not getting that stimulus. So.
Yeah, that's something that I've seen, at least in coaching and some high school administration, that kids are lacking big time in sleep, and it affects not only their school performance, but obviously their performance, especially if the game's at 7 p.m. that night and they didn't get a lot of sleep the night before. Now they're really struggling and not prepared as they could be for game time at night. So
on the big time colleges like Kentucky, Arkansas, they actually have sleep monitors with all their basketball players, football players. So if they'll see how much they slept, not only are they in bed, but their REM sleep. And then the strength coach of Kentucky or these big schools will tell the coach and say, hey, this guy got 2 hours of sleep, 0 REM sleep. Like he's probably not good to go to practice. And as a coach, then you could make an example of him, say, hey, you're going to watch your team play because you were irresponsible, went out last night or whatever, you didn't get enough sleep, so, and kind of set the tone. But that's what they're doing at the college level, like Division I high level. So
that's fascinating. I actually saw, you probably know about this guy. I don't know. I went down the rabbit hole on YouTube one day. I think is it Johnson, his last name? He's the guy who's trying to reverse engineer his age. And he's doing all this crazy stuff with supplements, and he doesn't eat after 1 p.m. or 12 p.m. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And it's a lot of crazy stuff. And he eats the same things, and he takes like 100 pills. I think he's condensed it a little bit with supplements. And he's trying to test every single vital organ in his body and to an age standard. And he's trying to, so he says his heart has improved, like gone from like a 45-year-old heart to, he's saying, an 18-year-old heart. I mean, he's obviously selling a lot of stuff here, but he's probably doing a lot of good things. But the one thing that I thought was great when I watched one of the videos was his sleep habit. Mm-hmm. He goes to bed at the same time definitely lives a very boring life, but he goes to bed at the same time every night, and he has perfect darkness. There's no distractions at all. Mm-hmm. And he says he's gotten to the point where when he goes in the room, his body is so trained that he falls asleep within 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Because his body is like, I go in there, I go to sleep. That's it. That's what the bedroom is for. That's it. Right? It's crazy. But it worked for him, I guess. I don't know if the kids have to get that extreme, but I think to your point, if you're going into bed and you're on your phone for an extra hour and then you leave it on, and now now you're strolling through social media and doing all these things, you're hurting yourself in your performance.
Yep, and you could start creating good habits when you're young too. Like I was watching this LeBron documentary on Netflix, and he has his room to like chill in with his wife, kids, have fun, and then his room to sleep in. So one thing that they can do right away, like now, if kids are watching this and they need help, was if you're gonna watch TV, scroll on your phone, just relax. And obviously, you need that relaxing time. Maybe do it in the living room or do it somewhere else. But then when you go to bed, just because then your mind and body will start making these associations, say like, I'm going into this room, the lights are off, it's time to sleep, and then you'll get a lot better sleep that way. So,
yeah, I think that's great advice. I mean, guys, I have 2 young kids, and I'm always harping on them that it's important to try to get sleep. But I don't think I'm always the best example, but I try to do a better job. Even the phones, just put on Do Not Disturb. I think it goes a long way. Yeah. Where you just kind of tell yourself, I'm not getting into the phone. The phone's worse than the TV. I feel like at least the TV, 100%. They might fall asleep. Yeah. The phone, they're just actively engaged. There's no way they're going to fall asleep and sleep great. Yeah, and you can go down the rabbit hole on how bad social media is right before you go to bed, and you see everyone's great highlights of the day, and then you're like, oh, I didn't do anything of that nature. But they have to realize that that's Instagram is a highlight reel, so it's just like that's right. So I think that's big too. Yeah,
that's a good point. It's a good point. Back to basketball and training. Especially at the guard position, kids want to get shifty. Kids want to be quick. Kids want to have that crossover and be able to blow by defenders. What are some things that they can do to increase like that shiftiness or that quickness?
I think of working on like pace of play is really big. So when you're lifting, not just when I was a basketball player, basketball player, I would just go at 100% all times. But when you look at the basketball players now, like the James Hardens of the world, you can see how shifty they are when they go slow to fast. So you should train like that. So doing tempo work when you're, let's say, squatting. So going 3 seconds eccentric on the way down, pausing, and then going fast up. So you want to train how you play. So if you want to be shifty when you go play and you want to go slow to fast with a crossover or anything like that, I think that's how you should train. And that's how the game is evolving now. Like you look at Russell Westbrook, maybe in his early career, he was just so much faster and powerful. He would just go straight to the line. But now, as the game evolved, you like to slow and then go fast. I think that's like how the game's evolving now.
And even in conditioning, jogging for a basketball player, I can't imagine that jogging 2 or 3 miles or 5 miles is too beneficial. Your thoughts on that and getting in shape for the season, being like, you know, the idea of being in shape is just jogging the way to do that.
Yeah, so I mean, every sport works a different cardiovascular system. If you're playing soccer, you might need that because you're constantly going. But you know, basketball is full of fast bursts, and you can even now again what they're doing at the big time universities, they'll put a heart rate monitor when they play. And they'll say how long they're going at X amount of pace for at 80% of their heart rate max for 30 seconds, and then they rested 15 on average. And they'll give all that game data to the players and coaches, and they say like, okay, so now we should train cardiovascularly 40 seconds, really, really high max intensity, and then 20 seconds would be like a dead ball situation, and then do 10 rounds of that, and that'll get you game ready as opposed to just jogging at the same pace. So like jogging at the same pace, it would be good for an active recovery day. I don't want to say it's like bad, but there's just better uses of your time because anytime you ask your body to do something, it's taxing on your body. So I really think it's like you just want to work smarter, not harder. And that's one thing that I really liked about strength conditioning. Like I would just work super hard, but I wouldn't be working on the right things. And my results would show. I'm like, I'm not getting stronger, I'm not jumping higher, but I'm outworking all these people. Maybe I need to fix my training. So that's, I think, a big key.
Yeah, that is great. And let's talk recovery post-game, postseason. What are some recovery strategies that you think that young athletes especially should partake in? Is stretching every day a huge component of that, and especially for their recovery into the off season and to prepare for the following season?
Yeah, the biggest recovery tool you could be is hydrated and sleep. Those are natural things that you can control. You could always dive into you can have Normatec leg sleeves, saunas, ice baths. I mean, but not a lot of people have access to that. So doing recovery is just if you sleep enough, drink enough water, and then and kind of like be aware of your body and say like, hey, I'm not feeling it today, and just like literally like telling your coach that and saying there's a reason I'm not feeling it today, because kids go through a lot of stressors, not just basketball. Maybe they had 5 tests that day, and then now they're asked to go guard the best player at practice. I think always like in today's day and age, you want to work smarter, not like harder like the old days. So you can kind of like talk to the players and say like, hey, I understand some family matters at home or whatever, like kind of take it easy today, maybe just go half a practice and don't not do anything. But so I think that's big for recovery, is just knowing your body, 1, hydrating, 2, and kind of just getting enough rest and kind of talking to your coaches on how you feel every single day too. So.
Yeah, I think young athletes or young parents or coaches listening out there, it's 2 huge things: is just simple hydration and sleep. Two key factors that everybody can really partake in, whether you're an athlete, whether you're not, basketball player, other sport, that really help with the recovery process and ultimately getting kids prepared for the next level.
The best advice that I've ever heard was if you are thirsty, you're already lost, because if you're thirsty, that means you're severely dehydrated. You should drink water even if you're not thirsty, and just say like, hey, 12 hours in the day, I need to have 12 of those water bottles. It's 4 p.m. now. I have 6 hours left. I only had 2, so I'm behind, right? So rather than don't act on impulse and say like, oh, I'm thirsty, I need to go, like then you're already behind. So that would be a key for the players.
Kev, we had Drew Roberts on here. Obviously, he's focused on training basketball, and we asked the question, do you need a trainer to train? You just mentioned not everybody has the resources. You have a great recovery business as well as your strength business at KMK. But talk about like parents making the decision to go ahead and make an investment in a personal trainer for strength and conditioning, the value of that. There's obviously cost associated with it. What would you advise them if they're on a budget in terms of getting involved with a physical training coach?
Yeah, so I would always advocate for a trainer because I also think if you get a really good trainer like Drew, you could ask all of the athletes that train with Drew, he's going to hold you accountable. One, he's going to be like a big brother. You could always ask for advice that he's only trying to get you better, right? It's not like your mom or dad will have a bias of saying, oh, I want you to do this because it might benefit them, or a friend or something like that. Like, that's his job to be a coach. So I'm always an advocate for coaching. If you were working with a budget, stuff like that, I would always, when they first start, that's the time to get a coach to develop the good habits. And then from there, like, half of coaching is just keeping people on the correct habits. Like, I've trained people, professional athletes. I've trained people that have worked out for 10, 15 years. They know what to do. That's not why they come see me, but they come see me say, all right, I know at 6 a.m. I have an appointment and I'm going to get charged if I don't go. So Kev's going to hold me accountable, and I don't want to think, I just want to do. So that's like more of the luxury side of training. But if you're a parent and you have a kid who doesn't know anything about lifting, that's the first time you want to invest in a coach to make sure all the movements are correct, make sure their training is proper, make sure the trainer can preach onto the young athlete, hey, it's important to do X, Y, and Z. Here's what I want you to do at home, stuff like that. So
plus, you're going to give them that core, like you just said, you're going to give them the foundation.
Yeah.
And now they can take what you did with them and go do it on their own, and then come see you again. If they can't afford to go see you 3 times a week, which is the ideal situation, probably more than that, but they can't afford to do that, at least you're going to give them the form, the structure, the programming, and then they come back, like you said, see you, whether it's a tune-up, give me some new stuff.
Yeah.
I think I'm here on this. Now I need to work on that.
Yeah.
And now can you give me some more stuff, Kev? Like, that's kind of what you're talking about, right?
The cheat code, I remember we didn't have the money to do personal training when we were younger, but it was so funny because I don't like parents like this, but my dad brought me to this training facility like we have, and he was like, all right, ask as many questions and learn as much as you can within an hour, and then we'll go to the next place and do the same thing, and you're going to work on all of those things for weeks, and then once we do that, like, he had the right idea, like that's what you technically should do. But if you're a super dedicated person, you just need some direction, and that's where the trainer is going to give you direction. So that's investing in a trainer early on, and if you feel like you're good enough on the habits that you'll stay with it, then that's what I would advise.
That's why you ban cell phone recording when I'm in your facility.
Yeah.
And if you're a basketball coach out there that doesn't have the means for maybe a strength and conditioning coach, what would you say to that coach, and where could they start? Maybe go around asking a local strength and conditioning coach, but where should they start with their team if they either A, don't have a weight room, or don't have the means to get a strength and conditioning coach?
I think a lot could be learned in certain books, YouTubing, looking at what the best is doing. So if they're a high school coach, looking at what, so you simply put, if you're looking at high school and saying like Notre Dame, West Haven, strength and conditioning like program, you go out and ask questions, talk. Like, everyone is pretty willing to like share knowledge, and there's a lot of with the internet, with Instagram, with YouTube. So there's a lot of information for free that you can try to like at least get an idea of what they should be doing. If you're not sure, if you have no experience in strength conditioning, why not type in current in-season strength conditioning workout for XYZ for basketball. I mean, you'll find something, and then you can kind of play with it and make your own judgments on it. But there's a lot of, with the internet, free knowledge out there if you don't have the ability to pay for a strength coach. So that's what I would say. And then kind of just every team's a little different, so you kind of have to look at the team and say, like, what do we need as a team? Are we slow? Are we not conditioned enough? Are we too small? Like, and then you kind of customize that program to whatever your team is. So,
Kev, plug yourself and KMK. Tell people where they can find you and how they can get in touch with you, please.
Yep. So I'm the owner of KMK Training in Fairfield, Connecticut. So you guys can look us up on Instagram, follow us on Facebook. First session is always free. We also have a recovery and wellness center, as well as a physical therapist, as well as visionary physical therapy. So any type of need and training, we can try to service it for you. So.
And Kev, what are your socials? Where can they find you? Facebook, Instagram.
Yep, just KMK Training.
KMK Training.
Yep, and then our recovery and wellness is Revived by KMK, and then the physical therapy is Visionary Physical Therapy.
Awesome, man. Well, Kevin Kochiss, CEO and founder of KMK Training, certified strength and conditioning specialist. We really appreciate having us or having you on. Really great stuff. If you're a player, coach, parent, really dive into this. Maybe send Kev a message or an email and go check out what he's got going down there. It's some really good stuff, and maybe could be hopefully future training for your younger son or daughter or athlete. So, Kev, I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Kev.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
This is Locked In, your source for everything basketball. Kev, once again, thanks, man.